The galaxy was in a state of unrest, torn apart by the wars between powerful alien empires and the smaller, less advanced civilizations scattered across the stars. Among the most feared of these empires was the Jagan, led by General Zorath, a ruthless and calculating commander whose strategic mind had earned him the reputation of being nearly invincible. His army was vast, his ships unmatched in firepower, and his enemies cowered at the mere mention of his name. The Jagan had swept across the galaxy, conquering everything in their path. But despite all their victories, one obstacle remained: the Terran Empire. It was a young, relatively unknown faction in the grand scheme of galactic power, and until recently had not posed any significant threat to the Jagan. However, the emergence of the Terran warship the Dreadstorm had changed everything. No one had expected it. No one, except perhaps the Terrans themselves. Captain James Hunter stood at the helm of the Dreadstorm, a ship unlike any other in the galaxy. The Terrans had put everything they had into creating this warship, and it showed. It wasn't just powerful, it was unpredictable. The ship had been designed to withstand the worst of what the galaxy could throw at it, equipped with weapons capable of tearing through even the most advanced enemy shields. But it wasn't just the ship that made the Dreadstorm dangerous. It was Hunter, the human commander at its helm. He was no ordinary captain. Hunter was known for his unshakable calm in the heat of battle, his sharp mind, and his ability to see through the chaos and find the perfect move. While the Jagan had relied on their strength and numbers, Hunter relied on his intelligence, creativity, and an uncanny ability to outmaneuver his opponents. The first encounter between the Terran fleet and the Jagan was meant to be a mere formality. Zorath, confident in his force's superiority, had ordered an immediate attack on the Dreadstorm, believing that the Terran ship would be easily overwhelmed. His fleet was immense, a force to be reckoned with, and they moved in formation with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The Jagan ships charged, their massive cannons aimed at the Terran ship, ready to destroy it in one decisive blow. However, as soon as the battle began, Zorath realized something was wrong. The Dreadstorm didn't behave like any ship he had ever encountered. It moved with an agility that defied its size, darting around his fleet with unexpected speed, dodging shots that should have been fatal. The Terran warship wasn't just evading their attacks, it was countering them. Hunter's tactics were unconventional, catching Zorath's fleet off guard at every turn. It wasn't just about firepower, it was about strategy. Each time the Jagan thought they had the upper hand, the Dreadstorm shifted, forcing them into an unexpected situation. Zorath watched in disbelief as his ships were outmaneuvered. The humans had no experience in galactic wars compared to the Jagan, yet they fought with a ferocity and intelligence that made Zorath question everything he had assumed about the Terrans. Their ships' weapons struck with pinpoint precision, targeting weak spots in his fleet's defenses. No matter what tactics Zorath tried, whether he sent in additional ships or attempted to outflank the human vessel, Captain Hunter responded with a move that turned the tables every time. Zorath's frustration grew as he realized that brute force alone wouldn't be enough to crush the Dreadstorm. The humans were proving to be far more resourceful than he had ever imagined. He had underestimated them, and it was a mistake he could not afford to repeat. The Jagan general stared at the tactical display, trying to find a way to break Hunter's will. If brute force wouldn't do it, then perhaps something else would. As he plotted his next move, Zorath's thoughts turned darker. He would not allow this human to become the symbol of resistance that could shatter the Jagan's dominance across the galaxy. This battle had only just begun, and Zorath was determined to ensure that the Terran captain would not survive to fight another day. Zorath, the formidable general of the Jagan, sat in the command center of his flagship, watching the battle unfold before him. The Terran warship, the Dreadstorm, had proven far more resilient and unpredictable than he had anticipated. No matter what strategy he employed, Captain Hunter and his crew always seemed one step ahead. The general's mind raced as he sought a solution to defeat the humans, but brute force and superior numbers weren't enough. The Terrans had something else, something beyond just their technology. It was their resourcefulness, their ability to adapt and think outside the box that made them so dangerous. Zorath's fleet was in disarray, unable to pin down the human ship. He couldn't afford to let this continue. Something had to be done, and it had to be done swiftly. With a scowl, Zorath turned to his second-in-command, a tall, dark-skinned alien named Kreth. "We need a different approach," Zorath growled, his voice low but filled with frustration. "Our forces alone won't be enough. We must break the human captain mentally." Kreth raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift in the general's demeanor. Zorath had always been one to rely on his forces and tactics, but now, something deeper was at play. The general was no longer just looking to destroy the Dreadstorm. He wanted to break the spirit of the man behind it. "What do you propose?" Kreth asked cautiously. A cold smile spread across Zorath's face. "We have a weapon. A secret weapon. The illusion sphere." Kreth listened carefully as Zorath explained the plan. The illusion sphere was an ancient device, capable of projecting highly realistic illusions directly into the mind of the target. It was a weapon designed to break even the strongest of wills by manipulating the mind, showing the victim their worst fears, their deepest regrets, and twisting their perception of reality. For most beings, it was impossible to resist, especially when placed under intense pressure. The general's idea was simple: infiltrate the Dreadstorm, capture Captain Hunter, and use the illusion sphere to make him lose his grip on reality. Once the Terran captain was mentally shattered, the crew would follow, and the warship would be theirs. "We'll send a small strike team," Zorath continued, "hidden under cloaking technology. They'll infiltrate the ship and deploy the illusion sphere directly onto the captain. Once he's broken, the crew will be easy to handle." Kreth nodded, agreeing with the plan. It seemed flawless. Zorath's forces were strong, but this was an opportunity to dismantle the Terran threat from the inside, without having to risk an all-out attack. The general signaled for the operation to begin. The strike team, a group of highly skilled Jagan soldiers, prepared to board a small, stealth ship. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the Dreadstorm, subdue Captain Hunter, and deploy the illusion sphere. The plan relied on surprise, and with the element of stealth on their side, the strike team would slip past the Terran defenses without raising suspicion. As the small vessel moved silently through the depths of space, Zorath observed from his flagship's command center, his eyes fixed on the display showing the Terran warship. He was confident. This time, the Jagan would succeed. Meanwhile, aboard the Dreadstorm, Captain Hunter remained unaware of the incoming threat. His crew was still recovering from the earlier battle, but Hunter's mind never rested. He was always thinking, always looking for the next move. He knew the Jagan wouldn't give up easily. If anything, they were growing desperate. Little did he know, the most dangerous attack of all was about to come, not in the form of weapons, but from the very mind itself. As the Jagan strike team boarded the Dreadstorm under the cover of darkness, they made their way toward the captain's quarters. Cloaked and silent, they moved like shadows, blending into the ship's environment. The illusion sphere was ready. This time, Zorath was sure the Terran would fall, and victory would finally be in the grasp of the Jagan. But neither he nor his soldiers had prepared for one thing: the resilience of the human mind. The strike team silently made its way through the vast corridors of the Dreadstorm, cloaked in advanced technology, their movements barely making a sound. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the ship, capture Captain Hunter, and deploy the illusion sphere. They had trained for this moment, each member highly skilled in stealth, ready to strike when the time was right. As they reached the door to the captain's quarters, they paused, ensuring there were no unexpected movements or security systems to thwart their plan. The team leader, a Jagan soldier named Vekth, signaled for the others to stand by as he carefully manipulated the control panel to open the door. It slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the dimly lit room where Captain Hunter rested. Inside, Hunter sat at his desk, his face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic maps and star charts. His eyes, always sharp, scanned the data, ever vigilant, never allowing himself to fully relax. The war was never far from his mind, and he knew the Jagan would come for them again. The earlier battle had only been the beginning. He could feel the tension growing, like the calm before a storm. But even as his thoughts circled around the strategies he had yet to formulate, a strange feeling crept over him, a sense of something amiss, something he couldn't quite place. He dismissed it, though. It was probably just the weight of command, the ever-present burden that came with leading the Dreadstorm. Outside, the Jagan strike team stood motionless, waiting for the right moment. Vecth glanced at the illusion sphere in his hand, knowing that once it was deployed, the captain's mind would be his to twist and control. With a quick nod, Vecth entered the room, his team following closely behind. The door slid shut behind them, and in an instant they surrounded Captain Hunter, catching him off guard. Before he could react, the team leader advanced toward him, the illusion sphere raised, ready to release its power. But what they hadn't anticipated was how quickly Hunter reacted. He was no ordinary captain. The moment he saw the Jagon soldiers, he didn't hesitate. He reached for the weapon holstered at his side, drawing it with lightning speed. The gun fired, and with pinpoint accuracy, one of the Jagon soldiers crumpled to the ground. The others reacted immediately, but Hunter was already on his feet, moving with a fluidity that made it clear he had been trained for situations like this. The Jagon team had underestimated him. They had assumed that the captain would be caught off guard, that the element of surprise would be enough to bring him down. But Hunter wasn't a typical leader. His instincts were sharp, and his reflexes even sharper. He ducked and dodged, his movements fluid and quick. His weapon now aimed at the remaining soldiers. The battle inside the captain's quarters erupted into chaos as the two sides clashed. But even as Hunter fought back with everything he had, a strange wave of disorientation washed over him. The illusion sphere, now activated, began to work its twisted magic. Hunter's surroundings seemed to shift and blur, the room warping around him as if reality itself were bending. He could still see the Jagon soldiers, but something else, something darker, crept into the edges of his vision. For a brief moment Hunter hesitated, unsure whether what he was seeing was real or just a trick of his mind. A vision from his past appeared before him. His home, a place he hadn't seen in years. He saw his family, his friends, all gathered together, but their faces were distorted, their smiles twisted into something nightmarish. The images felt real, so real that for a split second, Hunter almost lowered his weapon. But then, his training kicked in. He shook his head, forcing the illusion out of his mind. This wasn't real. This wasn't his family. His mind had been invaded, and he knew that if he let it, the illusion would swallow him whole. With a quick motion, he fired again, striking down another soldier. The remaining Jagon soldiers seemed to hesitate, unsure of how to continue their attack. They had expected a broken man, a captain lost in his mind, but instead, they faced someone who had fought through far worse. Captain Hunter's will was unyielding. His body moved with practiced precision, each shot fired with deadly accuracy. Though the illusion sphere had taken its toll, Hunter was still standing. He was not the broken man the Jagon had hoped for. Instead, he was the storm they had tried to create. And now it was their turn to feel the consequences of underestimating him. As the last Jagon soldier fell, Hunter stood tall, breathing heavily, but his mind was clear once more. The illusion sphere had failed, and he had won. The battle was far from over, but for now, he had regained control, and the Jagon would soon learn that they had chosen the wrong human to break. Captain. Hunter stood alone in the aftermath of the attack, his mind still reeling from the effects of the illusion sphere. The room was littered with the fallen Jagon soldiers, their bodies sprawled across the floor. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and blood, a reminder of the close call he had just survived. Despite the disorientation he had felt in those fleeting moments when the illusion nearly overwhelmed him, Hunter had pushed through, his resolve stronger than ever. The Jagon had hoped to break him mentally, but they had underestimated his strength of mind, the years of training and experience that had honed his ability to resist even the most insidious forms of manipulation. As he stood there, catching his breath, the reality of what had just happened settled in. He wasn't out of danger yet. The Jagon would regroup, and the next attack would likely come with even greater force. But now, Hunter had a new understanding of his enemy. They were relentless, but they were also desperate. The attack had been a bold move, but it hadn't broken him. It had only made him more determined to fight back. Outside his quarters, the sounds of battle still echoed through the corridors of the Dreadstorm, the hum of the ship's defenses ringing in his ears. He couldn't afford to stand still for long. The crew needed him, and more importantly, the ship needed him. Without the Dreadstorm, the Terran fleet would be far less effective, and the Jagon would have an easier time picking them off one by one. Hunter knew that he had to act quickly. He ordered his remaining officers to regroup and prepare for the next phase of battle. The Jigan would not get a second chance to catch them off guard. As Hunter moved through the ship, he came to realize that the battle wasn't just a matter of technology or firepower. The Jigan were capable of more than just physical force. They were masters of psychological warfare, skilled in twisting the minds of their enemies. The attack on him had been a calculated risk, designed to force him into a mental breakdown, to make him doubt his own abilities. And for a brief moment, it had worked. The illusion had been so vivid, so real, that even he had felt himself slipping, but it hadn't lasted. His will had fought through the darkness, and that was something the Jigan hadn't anticipated. They had expected him to fall apart, but instead, they had only made him stronger. He reached the command center, where his officers were already preparing for the next wave of Jigan forces. The room was tense, every officer aware of the gravity of the situation. Hunter took his place at the helm, his eyes scanning the data streams as the battle raged on outside the ship. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but there was no time for hesitation. The Jigan had made their move, and now it was his turn. "Prepare for battle," he ordered. "We don't know when they'll strike again, but we need to be ready." His officers nodded, rallying behind him with renewed determination. They had seen what he was capable of, and now they understood the true nature of their enemy. The Jigan were relentless, but they were also vulnerable. If they could break one part of the Jigan strategy, if they could prove that they were not so easily intimidated, they could shift the balance of the war in their favor. The battle that followed was fierce, the ship rocking with the force of incoming fire from the Jigan fleet. But Hunter was no longer the man who had been caught off guard in his quarters. He was the captain of the Dreadstorm, and he would not back down. He led his crew with unwavering confidence, guiding them through the chaos with the same calm resolve that had allowed him to survive the earlier attack. As the battle raged on, Hunter's mind remained clear. The Jigan may have tried to break him, but they had only strengthened his resolve. The Terrans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future, and Hunter would lead them to victory, no matter the cost. The Jigan, on the other hand, began to realize that their initial plan had failed. The illusion sphere had not broken Captain Hunter as they had hoped. Instead, it had made him stronger, more focused. They had made a critical error in thinking that they could win through mental manipulation alone. It was clear now that Captain Hunter was not a man who could be easily swayed or defeated. Zorath, watching the battle unfold from his flagship, felt a pang of frustration. The Terran captain had proven to be far more formidable than he had ever imagined, and now the Jigan were forced to reconsider their approach. The war was far from over, but Hunter had just given his people something they hadn't had before: hope. And with that hope, the Terrans would fight with everything they had, because they knew, just as Hunter knew, that victory was still within their grasp. The tension in the command center was palpable, the crew working tirelessly to keep the Dreadstorm in the fight against the relentless Jigan. Captain Hunter stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the holographic map of the battlefield, his mind focused despite the chaos around him. The battle had escalated, but Hunter had a plan now, one born from the lessons he had learned through the illusion and the harsh reality of war. He knew that the Jigan wouldn't back down easily, but he had seen their weakness, their desperation. Their reliance on psychological warfare had failed, and it was time to turn that weakness into an advantage. As he looked at his officers, he saw the resolve in their eyes. They were no longer just following orders. They were fighting with him, and for the survival of humanity. Hunter issued a series of commands, his voice steady and authoritative as he guided the Dreadstorm through the twists and turns of the battlefield. Every decision he made now carried weight. Every maneuver had to be precise. He knew that if he failed, the Jigan would press on, and the consequences would be dire. But there was something else driving him now. His crew, his people, and the memory of what the Jigan had tried to do to him. He would not let them have the victory they sought. They had tried to break him, to turn him into a mindless puppet, but he had emerged stronger, more focused, and ready to lead his people to victory. The Jigan fleet, meanwhile, was beginning to feel the pressure. Zorath, the leader of the Jigan forces, watched from his flagship as the Terran fleet adapted to every move they made. Their initial confidence had started to waver, their attacks becoming less coordinated as they struggled to understand why their tactics were failing. They had never encountered a human like Captain Hunter before. He had resisted their mental manipulation, fought back with unwavering determination, and now he was leading his people to a hard-fought victory. Zorath, realizing that their strategy needed to change, ordered his fleet to retreat and regroup. But it wasn't just a tactical withdrawal, it was a desperate attempt to hold on to the advantage they had once believed to be theirs. Hunter saw the Jagon retreat and knew it wasn't a simple victory. It wasn't the end of the war, but it was a significant shift in the battle. The Jagon had learned the hard way that humanity could not be easily broken, and Captain Hunter had proven that even in the face of their darkest strategies, there was a resilience in human spirit that could not be crushed. As the Jagon fleet withdrew, the Dreadstorm and the Terran forces held their position, victorious for now but ever vigilant. The crew had done their part, and Hunter had done his. But this victory was only a temporary one. The war would continue, and the Jagon would return. Hunter knew that he had to prepare for the next battle, for the next challenge, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of hope. The Terrans had survived the Jagon's most insidious attack, and they had come out stronger for it. The crew gathered together, their faces a mix of exhaustion and triumph. They had fought hard, and they had won. But Hunter couldn't help but wonder how many more battles lay ahead. The Jagon would not give up easily. Yet, as he looked around at his officers, he knew one thing for certain. They were ready. They had faced the darkest of challenges and had emerged victorious. Hunter had chosen them for a reason. And now, with the Jagon retreating, he realized that their true strength wasn't in their weapons or their technology, but in their unity. They fought together. They survived together. And that would be their greatest advantage as they moved forward. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. The Jagon would return, but now they would face a Terran force unlike any they had ever encountered. Hunter smiled grimly as he watched the stars outside the window, the vastness of space stretching before him. There was still much to be done. The victory was sweet, but there would be no rest for the Dreadstorm and its crew. They had proven themselves capable of standing against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The Jagon had chosen the wrong, human to break, and now Captain Hunter was determined to make them regret it. The war was far from over, but with his crew by his side, he knew that humanity's future was secure, at least for now.